Hello folks, I am Sidney Lambert-Lalit, lecturer in the Center for Energy Economics and Management at IFP School, and I am thrilled to join you again in this MOOC. If you remember what we mentioned in the introduction videos, the perfect energy mix should be clean, affordable, and reliable. But because no single energy can tick all these boxes alone, most mixes are balanced between multiple sources of energy. However, what we saw together is that renewables emit far less carbon dioxide per unit of electricity produced than fossil fuels. In this video, I will present one of the main challenges of integrating more renewables in the power generation mix, the availability of non-dispatchable resources. You have probably heard a lot about the emergence of solar and wind power. Indeed, both are currently booming. And the International Energy Agency expects them to be the fastest growing technologies to be installed in the next 20 years. Due to this expansion, one key challenge we will have to deal with is the availability of resources. As a matter of fact, depending on climate conditions for each specific site, a wind plant will generate electricity between 15 and 40% of the time on an annual basis, while for PV, it can vary from 10 to 25%. You can see on the graph next to me the cyclical nature of solar and wind resources. In the case of France, for example, solar plants provide more electricity during summer, while wind generates more electricity during winter. This variability of resources is a major flaw when compared with load factors of coal, natural gas, or nuclear that are constant and can reach up to 90%. Another issue comes from the intermittent nature of the wind and solar resources. Obviously, this is true for a single power installation. When there is no wind, a wind plant will generate no electricity. But it is also the case at a wider scale. If you look at this graph showing the solar and wind production all over Germany during a week in summer, you can see that all the combined solar and wind plants in production can vary from 1 gigawatt up to more than 40 gigawatt, and these loads can decrease and increase in only a few hours. The issue is that neither the plant owner nor the grid operator decide when to run solar and wind plants, as these installations are not dispatchable. Indeed, solar and wind electricity come and go with the resource, and it is the grid operator's duty to manage the residual production of dispatchable plants to match demand for power. This implies that we need to maintain costly and polluting backup technologies, such as natural gas or coal power plants, to compensate for the missing production when solar and wind are absent. Another solution would be to store power, but for the time being, economically viable storage capacities remain limited, although battery costs have greatly decreased in the recent years. My colleague David Texera from IFP Énergie Nouvelle will tell you more about storage in one of the subsequent videos. But even if production can be forecast accurately, managing the net load when more and more variable resources supply a given grid requires technical prowess. The net load is the residual part of production that is dispatchable. As solar and wind have zero marginal costs of production, they will always have priority access to the grid. Other sources of electricity will then be put in production according to the merit order, meaning that the generation units with the lowest marginal cost will be put in production first, until supply matches demand at any given time. If we take the example of California, where new solar PV installations are added every year, more and more production comes from this resource during the daytime. As a consequence, the net load follows a U-shaped curve from sunrise to sunset. The issue is that every year, as the curve gets steeper, there is a need to ramp up huge capacities to match demand for power in the evening when the solar PV supply is gone. This is a tremendous challenge for the grid operator and power producers, and it will become more and more pronounced as PV installations increase. In the end, what we need to continually integrate more solar and wind power production is flexibility. Flexibility in order to be able to adapt the residual load more efficiently, but also flexibility to shift demand for power at the most adapted time of the day. To sum up what we've just said, solar and wind installations are booming and will continue to grow in the next 20 years. But these low carbon sources of power generation come with their own challenges. Sun and wind are variable and dependent on resources. PV only runs when there is sun, wind turbine when there is wind. Furthermore, they are not dispatchable. We cannot command them to operate. This requires flexibility from the rest of the grid, with backup installations that can be costly and polluting, storage that is still costly today, and a smarter grid, which is complex to manage for the time being. In any case, this will trigger a revolution in the electricity chain as we know it. But before exploring with you what the future of power may look like, I will see you in the next video to tell you about the other challenge for renewables, the need to reduce their cost.